Yeah, I'm Bruce Fenton, CEO of Chainstone Labs, which is an investment and advisory company. The main business that we have is we own a couple other things. We own Atlantic Financial, which is a registered investment advisor firm. We own the Satoshi Roundtable event, and we own Watchdog Capital, which is a SEC registered broker-dealer. And I've been in the securities brokerage business since I was a little kid, really. My first job was at 14. I got licensed at 19 as a stockbroker and financial advisor. So I've been registered or licensed for 28 years or more. And I'm very passionate about securities and economics and money, and especially focused on merging that with Bitcoin. So Watchdog's goal is to kind of be the securities brokerage firm for the Bitcoin era. And we're really excited. The timing is obviously perfect on that. Yeah, I mean, the natural power structures in our world have typically been very centralized. It's people, ultimately single human beings sometimes, who have huge power over other people's lives. And there's a lot of drawbacks of that. And what we've seen in our community with Bitcoin, Bitcoin has no leader. Bitcoin doesn't have any centralized power who's in charge of it. And that's really extraordinary to have something this powerful and this influential that is, has attracted this much interest from around the globe, major corporations, companies, all without any leader. There's nobody in charge. And there's some real power in that. You can move faster in some ways when you have kind of a movement that everybody can do their own thing. Anybody can work for Bitcoin. Anybody can go ahead and build on it. They don't need permission. And the old world systems where you have centralized power, where you have single people in charge, you have to have decisions made, and it slows things down. So there's certain things in our world that just work better in a more decentralized way when you have the power distributed rather than focused on one or a handful of people. Historically, a lot of the worst things that have happened in history have been the result of centralized power. We've had a lot of death and a lot of destruction. Governments have killed 100 million of their own people over the last century. And so, that's the darkest side of the, pure centralization. So, and decisions that may not even cost lives, they cost people their jobs or their, inflation. We're seeing inflation right now. We're seeing businesses shut down. We've had people had their gyms and their restaurants closed down. These are all the results of centralized power, and you may even support those decisions, but I don't think anybody says that they're going to always support every decision that every politician makes. Eventually, you're going to come out on the wrong side of these kind of things. So there's a big drawback in having that power. If you put the power in the hands of the people, there's also some drawbacks, but it's not the kind of wholesale destruction that you can see when you have, single power structures in charge. Putting people in charge of their own lives is what it's really all about. Having people make their own decisions. No politician in some centralized office in Washington, D.C. is going to make decisions about your life better than you are yourself. So I want to see a world where people are empowered to make more decisions and have more control of their own life, their own money, and all aspects of their life, so they can make their own decisions. And they might make a mistake, but at least it won't hurt, in some cases, millions of people like you have with the decisions that politicians make. We've got too much government is the problem. The government has just ballooned in size. There's over 1 million pages of federal legislation. The government is in every aspect of our lives. Here we are at this huge conference, the fastest growing space in the industry, and the CEOs that I talk to, the ones who are really moving, they're adding thousands of jobs to our high paid jobs. They're adding capital and value to the economy. They're being crushed by government again and again and again across the board. Different agencies are keep holding them back, different regulations, lack of clarity, and that's the result of just this expanded government, which happens. Sometimes it's well-meaning do-gooders who say, there ought to be a law, and they mean well. But even in the best cases, when they mean well, it's usually co-opted by special interests. So you have a lot of just big government programs and big spending, and it costs us a lot of money. They're taking money from us to make things less efficient. And that's a big problem, and that's a big problem at the federal level. So I think the reason that the industry hasn't united to present policy to the US government yet is because there's so many people, and it's such a decentralized industry. There's a lot of different opinions. There's a lot of people who are just very against the idea of anything government at all. I'm kind of on that side of, I'd be cautious of any policy. I think that the best thing they could do is just completely stay out of it entirely. And in some times I've even encouraged to not even engage. Like with the bit license, there was a lot of companies in New York who thought that, we can go in and we can talk to them and we'll help them and we'll have a voice at the table and we can set policy. And it ended up coming out terrible. Almost anything government touches is going to come out terrible. Even if we have some well-intentioned thing that we did unite as an industry and present, I think there's still going to be some problems added to that by government. Government is rarely going to take a good idea and make it good. So the kind of policies I'd like to see would be, deregulatory, less regulation, make it easier for people to invest and that kind of thing. And then also self-regulation. One of the greatest self-regulations is what we saw in the ICO boom, which many of these were illegal under U.S. law, but the regulators and the Justice Department couldn't keep up with all of them because it boomed so fast and there were so many offerings. And it wasn't the legality that stopped these investments that were bad investments. It was that they were bad investments. The market took care of itself. And that's a better way of self-regulating and kind of correcting the system than having centralized authorities and politicians in there. Because even if they're right, they might change later,
I'm Justin Rezvani. I'm the founder and CEO of Zion.
I'm JP Sears, and I'm with Zion. I'm the founding creator.
Zion is a decentralized social network built on the Bitcoin Lightning Network. It's designed to be the safest and most civil place online.
I first connected with Justin a little over a year ago. Learned about this project he's working on. I thought, well, that sounds pretty amazing because I see major problems with centralized social networks. As many blessings as they brought to the world, I see major problems. Censorship, governing, control, influencing people's minds to something that's not based on truth. And so I heard about this project Justin's working on, and I said, well, I've known we need that solution. I just didn't know what the solution was, but that solves problems that affect my life and that affect a lot of people's lives. And then because Zion runs on Bitcoin, another piece to my journey was there was a Michael Saylor video that I watched shortly thereafter, and that's what opened my, at the time, very ignorant eyes to the power of Bitcoin. So learning about the power of Bitcoin, how it empowers individuals to have sovereignty and freedom, and then merging that with the application layer of Zion got me pretty excited. So shortly thereafter, we formed a little partnership. Yeah, and I would add, I think a risk of holding Bitcoin is quite honestly tyrannical governments trying to kill solutions that empower humanity beyond the control of the governments and the companies that run the governments. But I think the reward of Bitcoin is freedom, sovereignty, and a stable future for people and their families.
I think the most amazing thing to me is I can store 24 words in my mind and travel with hundreds of millions of dollars around the world with no one ever knowing that. That's a very unique situation. If you want to store $100 million, how do you do that in any other situation? $100 million of gold, probably going to take up this corner. $100 million of cash, probably going to take up half of this entire room. And how do you transport that over space? And then how do you transport that over time? I think Bitcoin is the one asset that allows for that you can travel with your mind. It's an asset that you can die with and doesn't have to go to somebody else. And that doesn't exist with any other asset ever. You die, your house will go to somebody else. If you die, the gold will be found by somebody else. If you die, the cash will go to somebody else. If you die, the land will go to somewhere else. Your plane, your boat, your watch, your everything. But your Bitcoin can die with your mind.
So many people here are freedom lovers in the three-dimensional sense, where Bitcoin is the digital expression of freedom. So, and to me, freedom is our God-given state. It's the most beautiful thing humanity can ever experience. Therefore, it's very easy to take for granted because it's should be our natural state. But we're living in a world where that becomes compromised. So it's incredibly refreshing to see so many freedom lovers here reminding each other what's most important and also reminding each other we are the majority.
My name is Jo Jorgensen. Currently, I'm president of the board of People for Liberty. My real job, though, is I'm senior lecturer at Clemson University. Everybody who's interested in Bitcoin should be for liberty, because right now we've got the Democrats and Republicans who are doing everything they can to get rid of it. And the problem is the Democrats and Republicans try to spend our money. They try to tell us how to live our lives. They want to know every single transaction and tax every single transaction. And I think they're afraid of Bitcoin because this is something that maybe they can't track as well. And also, Bitcoin is a real currency, and it's not subject to inflation the way that government money is. You know, why don't the established politicians like Bitcoin? You know, it takes away their power. We've gotten, our privacy's been taken away from us. And a few people pointed out how it's just not the way it was years ago. We've got to get out of the system where politicians are just saying what benefits them and what they think people want to hear, as opposed to what people really want. Let's let people make their own choices instead of people in Washington making choices for the rest of us.
So my name's Alex Gordon-Brander, and I'm with the Codex Network and the company Codex Labs that is launching the Codex Network. In simple terms, a way to bring DeFi, decentralized finance, to the very global mass market, to billions of people. So right now, less than 0.1% of people are actually participating in DeFi in any way because, you know, hundreds of dollars of fees, and you need like devices and going through 5 steps, and it's just crazy. So we've got a full DeFi platform that can give finalized settlement of swapping and sending fiat and crypto on chain in like sub 2 seconds. And so that's a thing that suddenly takes this fascinating world of DeFi that's still like mostly experimentalists in the kind of rich world having an amazing time, and opens it up so that suddenly everybody in the world is able to interact essentially with a single ledger in the currencies that they're used to and in Bitcoin. So it's kind of almost like a generalization of some of what's been happening in El Salvador to like multi-currency, multi-crypto. So I'm interested in looking at how with Bitcoin as the core gold layer in the structure, we can build out a stack that sort of really exposes everybody in the world to the benefit of self-sovereign currency without having to have everybody in the world take Bitcoin as legal tender, because I think we can do the former in a couple of years with technology, and the latter is a political fight, which is big, but it's going to be a longer fight. And again, I think from a human development perspective, it's just going to be bad if there is a hyper-Bitcoinization and, you know, so much of the world is left behind. Although, you know, the good news is Bitcoin's already being massively valuable, especially in places like, I saw in Brazil, it's now 43% of Brazilian households have Bitcoin, and Indonesia, and so, you know, it's also kind of already here. If in any way, shape, or form you have keys to a chain that is sufficiently decentralized that nobody's going to take away the value you have in a ledger somewhere on a chain, then you have a fundamentally different position than you do, you know, even as we saw in Canada, you know, in the developed world now, where the government can shut down your bank account because you gave money to an organization the government doesn't agree with. So for everyone in the world, having self-sovereign money is important, and obviously in refugee situations, it's super important. In areas of the world where there's little identity penetration and few bank accounts and the whole economy is cash-based, it's very hard for cash-based economies to integrate and not get further left behind. So self-sovereign cash in those countries, you know, I wouldn't want to try to like persuade Nigerian villagers who don't have bank accounts about Bitcoin, but they have mobile phones, and giving them an ability to have an e-Naira on their mobile phone that they can move around, and then on their mobile phone there's a way to sell that and buy Bitcoin, and they don't have to choose, but there's a way to participate and they can buy $1 of Bitcoin and be paying 1/100th of a penny fee for the transaction. That's a whole different ballgame. We've got 3 sort of local and state government level pilots that we're in conversation about to do universal basic income or universal earned income programs using the app. And so we'll basically, we're going to do a 1-to-1 match of our own tokens with any, up to $1 million or $2 million for any local or state government that wants to distribute money on a digital platform to, people on food stamps or the poorest people in the economy. And we'll just show up, 1-to-1 match that, and then give those people sort of doorways straight into being able to buy Bitcoin and other crypto, as well as, be able to actually manage their own funds and be in the digital economy.
My name is Brock Pierce, and I do everything I can. Well, I do a little of this, a little of that. I mean, I try to make the biggest, most positive impact in the world however I can. And I do that through a lot of different channels. And right now my focus is, and not my area of expertise, but my focus is our system of governance, otherwise known as our government, and how to bring future sort of conversations to the table, start to address issues of incentives. It's the system that governs over us. And I'm working on figuring that out and how to improve that system. I view Bitcoin more as freedom, and I think it represents financial freedom and an incorruptible system, so trustworthy that it's trustless. Bitcoin is a way to tap into the future. Most people haven't gotten into Bitcoin, even though now most people have heard of it, because it looks intimidating. It looks intimidating. You're like, what is this tech and all these things I have to learn? No, you don't. You don't have to learn anything. All you have to say is, I'm intrigued enough that I'm willing to invest or spend $20, our system of governance, otherwise known as our government, make very important decisions on our behalf that affect our collective future. I think it's important that our elected officials understand the future and understand where we're going, hopefully have some shared vision of what kind of future we want to live in. Because by having that shared vision, by understanding the future and where we're going, the likelihood of us getting to that destination safely and in a way that we're all happy is higher. And so I think it's very important that our elected officials, have a sense of the things that matter right now. And I'm really happy to see more and more members of Congress taking the time to learn, understanding that the future matters and the future is going to happen to us or with us. So what's most important is that you get involved. I'm deeply concerned about our collective future, and I don't think that our elected officials know enough. But that's okay. Let's elect those that do, and let's educate those that are. I travel around and talk to world leaders on a regular basis. I talk to elected officials here in the US and abroad on a regular basis, and I'm a source of information for them. I'm talking to a lot of people. We're dozens of nations. I did a reconnaissance mission and ran for the President of the United States in 2020. I'm a reverse engineer. And so I was reverse engineering our political system to understand all the ways in which it's rigged. I'd say mission accomplished. I got very involved in other people's elections and discussions with world leaders and governments last year. 2022 is about the midterm elections, and I've filed for a US Senate run. I spent the end of the year getting my affairs in order, my house in order. The first quarter of this year was about assembling the team and talking to friends and family, to get a feel for their opinion of this run. And I think every single person I talked to was enthusiastic. Can't remember if there was anyone that didn't like the idea. Now I've broadened the conversation. I'm in what I call the 100 days of listening. And I'm talking to as many business leaders in town halls to create consensus, to help them understand who I am and hear what matters to them, what their concerns are, and see if they think that my running is a good idea.